Hello and welcome. I am Juliette Rizzo and I will be talking with Bonnie Jones from the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, about the final Part B regulations implementing the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. We'll be talking about the provisions relating to the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard, or NIMAS, as well as the National Instructional Materials Access Center, or NIMAC. Welcome, Bonnie, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Juliet.
I am sure many in the audience are like me. This is a completely new concept, and I feel like I don't even know what questions to ask. Let's start with the obvious. What is NIMAS?
NIMAS is a mandatory standard created by IDEA 2004 to help increase the availability and timely delivery of appropriate and accessible instructional materials to elementary and secondary students who are blind and students with other print disabilities. The purpose is to help to ensure that such students receive a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, and can participate in the general curriculum consistent with their individualized education programs, or IEPs.
That doesn't seem complicated at all, and the access issue has existed since the first Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975. Why is there a need for such a standard?
Well, there's a long history of issues that identified the need for a mandatory standard. For many students with disabilities, the limitations of print technology raise barriers to access. For example, there are students who cannot see the words on a page, hold a book, understand or decode text, or comprehend syntax that supports the written word. Each may experience different challenges, and each may require different supports. In some cases, schools may not have the technology to provide accessible versions. In other cases, teachers and schools may not understand the issue of access or what solutions are available.
What are some of the other barriers, Bonnie?
For many students, the problem is a frustrating distribution problem. A lot of students who need accessible instructional materials can't get them when needed. Present policies and procedures for ordering and disseminating accessible material are inefficient and not systematic, raising barriers rather than providing opportunities. One example, states use electronic files from publishers to provide accessible versions of textbooks, such as digital formats. Because states determine their own requirements for these files, publishers typically prepare many different file types. This increases costs for production, and students experience delays and inconsistencies in the materials produced. So, we have a fragmented system that uses a wide range of conversion houses, also called accessible media producers, which are for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, and they convert diverse file types into accessible formats.
That must be very frustrating for students, their families, and their teachers. Now you can begin to see the need for a single standard.
That's right, Juliet. The adoption of a standard is a simplifying step that has been crucial to progress in many other fields. One example is video technology adopting a common format for DVD and HD TV.
And that's where OSEP and the U.S. Department of Education come in?
Yes, in 2002, to encourage accessible, timely, and consistent versions of print instructional materials for use in elementary and secondary classrooms, OSEP funded the National Center on Accessing the General Curriculum at CAST in Wakefield, Massachusetts for this work. The project was charged with establishing technical specifications for a voluntary standard for accessible instructional materials.
How would they accomplish what sounds like a groundbreaking effort?
In November of 2002, the project established a National File Format Technical Panel. The panel, more than 40 experts, included such representatives as educators, publishers, technology specialists, and disability groups. By October 2003, the panel concluded its work, reaching consensus on a new file standard. It accomplished in a year what had not been possible in the preceding 9 years.
What happened next?
Next, the department initially announced NIMAS as a voluntary standard on July 27, 2004. It became a mandatory standard on July 19, 2006, when the department published the NIMAS as a final rule in the Federal Register. To assist in implementing the standard, OSEP funded two centers, the NIMAS Development Center and the NIMAS Technical Assistance Center.
Could you tell us about the work they are doing?
Sure. The NIMAS Development Center identifies new technologies and education research that will make the NIMAS an even more effective standard, and it explores existing and new market models of distribution to provide accessible materials to eligible students with print disabilities.
And the Technical Assistance Center?
The NIMAS Technical Assistance Center works with key stakeholders such as state education agencies or SEAs and publishers to assist them to implement NIMAS. It provides technical assistance to ensure an effective implementation of the NIMAS, and it disseminates information and provides training on NIMAS.
What implications do the regulations have for this work?
The NIMAS was incorporated into the final regulations implementing IDEA 2004 as Appendix C. In addition, the final regulations make it clear that states must adopt the NIMAS and that states are required to establish a state definition of timely manner for providing appropriate and accessible instructional materials to eligible students, regardless of whether states choose to coordinate or not with the NIMAC. In addition, the SEA must ensure that all public agencies take all reasonable steps to provide those materials at the same time as other children receive theirs.
What is NIMAC?
IDEA 2004 established NIMAC. NIMAC is a repository and national distribution center for NIMAS files. Publishers send NIMAS files of these materials to NIMAC, and authorized users can download the NIMAS files in order to make accessible formats of these materials for use by eligible students.
I see. You mentioned that states may choose to coordinate with the NIMAC. What is the responsibility of a local educational agency, or LEA, and SEA for providing accessible instructional materials for these students?
Nearly all states are coordinating with NIMAC because it promises to be a more efficient system for assuring that accessible instructional materials are available. It's important to note that the NIMAC does not provide services to all children with disabilities who need accessible materials. The IDEA is specific that the NIMAC receives and maintains NIMAS files of print instructional materials for use in elementary and secondary classrooms by students who are blind or students with other print disabilities. SEAs and LEAs still are responsible for ensuring that children with disabilities who need instructional materials in accessible formats receive them in a timely manner, even if they are not eligible to use NIMAS file sets.
I guess I didn't have to worry about questions. The more I find out, the more questions I have. When we were talking about barriers, Bonnie, you mentioned the term specialized formats.
Juliet, that question raises one of the issues that we're trying to address, establishing a common language by defining terms so that we can be certain we all mean the same thing. Specialized formats means Braille, audio text, digital formats, and large print.
What other terms require common understanding?
One term is print instructional materials. This means printed textbooks and related printed core materials that are written and published primarily for use in elementary and secondary school instruction and are required by an SEA or LEA for use by students in the classroom. Another term is blind or other persons with print disabilities. As defined in the section of IDEA authorizing the NIMAC, this term means children served under IDEA who are qualified to receive books and other publications produced in specialized format consistent with current Library of Congress regulations.
What do you mean by source files?
Good question. Source files are usually developed by publishers and are used to create instructional materials such as textbooks and other required supplementary instructional materials needed by students. NIMAS file sets are source files.
This is a whole new language.
We know. There are two more terms that we are now using to describe how the NIMAS and NIMAC work. Coordinating agencies are SEAs and LEAs that coordinate with the NIMAC. Authorized users are individuals who have access to the NIMAC database and NIMAS files. For more information on any of these terms or the NIMAS itself, please see the NIMAS and NIMAC websites at nimas.cas.org and at nimac.us.
Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate your being here with us today to talk about these important provisions. This video is one in a series prepared by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, to assist our stakeholders in better understanding some of the significant provisions of the final regulations implementing IDEA 2004. We hope you found it helpful, and we thank you for your attention.